Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my homeowner association took offense to my disabled daughter and the therapy playhouse we built for her in our garden. They claimed the playhouse was illegal and called the police on us for it. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the HOA stories. So my story starts in my homeland of the Philippines, where I am blessed with a loving wife and beautiful daughter. Not everyone would think to call this a blessing, however, as there are many evil and cruel people in the world these days. My daughter, 4, was diagnosed with cerebral palsy after an appointment with the local doctor prompted by concerns from her teacher. While we are doing the best we can for her, we are still learning ourselves, trying to understand what it meant for our daughter and her future. One thing we found that did help her engage with us and her environment was a specially designed and medically mandated playhouse that aided towards her therapy and recovery. This little playhouse was the source of the problem, or so the HOA led us to believe. It all kicked off when the newly appointed HOA president Samantha was being shown around the neighborhood she would be managing. All of us currently living here found it quite odd that the board voted on hiring an outsider when a few people here offered to take the job. However, we accepted the decision when it was taken out of our hands. Her gaze locked onto our house, and in a swift robotic movement she moved towards the yard, only passing the front door when we realized she had noticed the playhouse instead. With a cruel and critical mind, the president began a rant to her attendants to check whether this was a violation, calling the playhouse ugly and weird in front of my daughter, who was sitting outside it. Following the commotion, I approached the group to calm the situation as my daughter threatened to start the waterworks. I introduced myself to the president and explained that the playhouse was special because of my daughter's condition, although she did not seem to understand or care, as she constantly interrupted the conversation until I abandoned the attempt. When she asked why the playhouse could not be smaller, I simply told her again that it was medically sanctioned and it was in my private yard. To her disgust, she seemed to take a dislike at her first challenges to authority, leaving again after demanding that we take down that ugly thing or else. We of course ignored the problem, as any sane adult would at such a childish demand. Unfortunately, this tantrum was one they came back to repeat numerous times over the next few weeks. Our disagreement had gotten so out of control, they began resorting to threats that they would remove it themselves if we did not act. We got scared for our daughter's safety, and sadly we had to limit her time outside during this period of unrest. Coming home from a family outing late one Saturday afternoon, we found that the playhouse had just vanished. The cause was quite clear though, as 2 deep tracks similar to that of a digger or truck ran the length of our yard from sidewalk to playhouse. Looking closer, we also found the broken remains of the playhouse dumped behind a wall of shrubs nearby. The vandals had not only ripped it up, but they could not even be bothered to take the evidence with them. Although we knew who was responsible based on their previous threats and demands, we had no proof that we could take to the police. What was even worse was, because the playhouse was specifically designed for my daughter's needs, it was also extremely difficult and expensive to make. A cost that we simply could not afford. My daughter still mourned for the loss of her happy place in the yard, forgetting each morning and rushing outside to find it gone and crying again. It was heartbreaking for us to watch. Unable to bear her sadness, we tried to appeal to the wider community for a fundraiser, but the sheer cost that we were trying to raise made people suspicious with questions like, "How can a playhouse be that much?" or "How much does she need it really?" from those who are otherwise ignorant to her condition. It was sad, but we were alone and helpless. Just when we thought they had already taken everything from us, the HOA returned, ready to take some more. For Christmas we had planned to buy our daughter some toys, but after the destruction we changed our minds and dug into our savings to get a miniature dollhouse. We gave it to her early and hoped that she would enjoy it even marginally in comparison. It was one such morning when my daughter was playing outside. At the same time, the HOA president was giving a group of interested buyers a tour of the neighborhood. As she noticed my daughter, she quickly diverted the group away from our house, and I watched on curious as the group seemed to go their separate ways. Minutes later, I hear shouting from the outside and exit to find Samantha towering above my daughter, yelling at her while my daughter cowered beneath her panicked. Without thinking, I stormed over and shoved the HOA president away, nearly causing her to fall over as she stumbled to regain her footing. I then picked up my daughter and took her back inside, ignoring the argument and threats of action behind me. An hour later, my yard was swarmed by 2 police vehicles heralded by flashing blue sirens. Their approach was echoed throughout the neighborhood, drawing a large, curious crowd of onlookers. The squad of officers approached the house cautiously, followed closely by the HOA president, who seemed to be lurking nearby, waiting for their arrival. In a competition for attention, the police officer struggled to explain his presence, with Samantha interrupting and drowning him out with her accusations. On top of aggravated assault, I was being charged with child abuse and neglect on the grounds that my daughter was playing outside. What the hell was going on here? I calmly explained the situation to the officers, all of whom seemed to relax when they realized the silliness of this otherwise serious call-out. All the while, the HOA president behind them still tried to exert her power over the situation. They let me off with a warning and were forced to warn Samantha too against her protests. As the police left, the HOA president continued to scream at them and us, with the audience of our neighbors citing how we were a stain on their perfect neighborhood and that dumb idiot kid does not belong here, supposedly. In the end, all this abuse was too much for us to handle without a fight. We had enough. So I called my attorney the next morning and set in motion a huge lawsuit for the HOA, as well as one for its president personally. We were determined to drag them kicking and screaming into the courtroom to stand trial. Harassment, discrimination, and abuse of power were only a few of their crimes on a very long list, not even speaking of the destruction of the Playhouse, but after some time they were found positively guilty by a jury majority. The HOA was forced to give us a massive payout of roughly $50,000, which is like 2.7 million Philippine pesos, for putting up with them, followed by the whole board being fired. New board members were suitably hired, who each welcomed us into the neighborhood and accepted our differences. It was a happy ending after all. And the next one is titled Car Petty Revenge. I have lived in my condo for around 3 years now. We have assigned parking within our lot. Well, I've always had a hard time with the person that parks next to me. She constantly is parked over the line and into my space. I have to park clear up against the person on the other side, or I cannot get in or out. I have talked to her so many times and she always says she won't do it again. She always does it. I am sick of it. Today when I came back from an appointment, she was parked clear over again, and well, I am done being nice. I parked in my space like a normal person, and that left about 6 inches between my driver door and her passenger door. I've told her repeatedly that she's going to get damaged one day. And well, today was the day. I slammed my car door against hers and pushed it so I could shimmy out, but it was a trick. I did not leave a note. I don't feel bad. Honestly, she brought it upon herself. I even tried getting the property managers to get her to stop, and she still has not listened. I am done being nice. I damaged her car and I don't care. This problem has been well documented for years and I am done. By the way, edit, her car was not there when I took my pupperoo out. Not sure if she's noticed or not. I will keep you all posted. Also, there was a note on my car this morning when I took my son to school. She called me all sorts of names and threatened to call the police if I did it again. I wrote on the back that as long as she parks like an a-hole, I will continue to damage her car. We will see what she says. Yet another edit, I got a visit from my boys in blue this afternoon. I know my local police force well, as I have worked within the mental health community before I had to go on disability. Now, my oldest has followed in my footsteps and gone into mental health within the community. These are low-income shelters for people in mental and emotional crisis. Anyway, they questioned me and I showed them all the documentation of the problem we've been having and unpaid tickets that she has gotten. And yep, they gave me a ticket for a whole $35 and now she is booted until she pays off those fines. I guess she did not think of that. And the next one is titled The Cheating Mother. For the cast we have Mom, Empty Human, as sister, me and my dad. I have no concrete dialogue for this story since it happened about 4 years ago and I pretty much want to forget about it. So now some background. My mother is not exactly the best person in the world. She used to abuse me and as both physically and mentally, mostly mentally, avoid responsibilities at home, and she also decided to cheat on my dad with several men around 13 years ago and never stopped. When my father discovered this, he simply stopped sleeping in the same room and stopped being affectionate towards her. He stayed with her for us, my sister and I, and decided to raise us basically alone, since mom was always outside with her partners. My mother used to simply arrive home to eat, sleep, and hurt me or my sister. The rest of the day she claimed to be working overtime. However, all the money she made was kept away for herself, and my father had to do real overtime to take care of us, and he was tired of not getting any help. Here is where my dad's revenge plan starts. He stayed quiet for a long time, managing work and parenting very well, but in the meantime, he was collecting all the evidence he could about my mom cheating, as well as evidence of abuse towards my sister and I. And he also kept supporting us, teaching us how to stand up for ourselves and each other, helping us understand how bad mom's behavior was and that we don't need to justify her bad treatment just for being our mother. He kept being the best person he could for about 10 years until sister and I were old enough to testify in court. Then he immediately asked for divorce and got it very easily, since mom kept lying about how he was abusing me and my children. But of course he had proof of her cheating and being the abuser, so they got divorced, but the plan did not end there, since he wanted us to live with him. My dad left our house immediately after the divorce, and 2 weeks later I moved in with him and my sister stayed with my mom. Let's skip some months until the court date to discuss the kids' custody. About 6 months prior, my mother lied about me living with her so she could get that sweet child support check. But when the court date arrived, S and me testified against her, explaining how bad of a mother she was. And I said that I've been living with my dad for months, contrary to what my mother had said. Of course, she wanted to play the victim with lies, which we refuted. The judge was not having it and told her that she needed to stop lying because she was being fined for lying to a judicial authority. Of course, she lost our custody and she was forced to return the child support money to us. Now she lives alone and sometimes tries to play the "forgive me, I know I did wrong" card with us, only to ask for money right after, but none of us want to see her again. Not exactly a massive sweet and evil revenge, but after I told my dad about this sub, he told me I should post a story. I hope it actually belongs here. By the way, the child support thing, in my country when parents divorce, it's the other parent who gives the money to the one with custody of the children. We call that money child support, but in this case, where both parents have only one children at their care, they get nothing from each other. My mom said she had both of us to get money from my dad, but that was a lie. The next one is titled, "Should Not Have Called the Police." I usually park in my boyfriend's driveway, but one day he washed his car, so his car was in the center of the driveway. I parked a few houses down in front of a hedge, not close to a mailbox or driveway. I did not see the no parking sign until the next morning. I knew when I saw the ticket someone had to have called it in, because it is far into a big suburban neighborhood on a Tuesday at the end of a cul-de-sac. Cops are not just strolling around. Then I read the ticket and the cop was like, "Hey, someone sent videos and pictures. I had to ticket you." Like, what the hell? Who cares? I'm not in front of a driveway or mailbox. The back fifth of my car was past the sign. So I knew which house called it in because I've been watching and they normally park their truck there. And well, I also learned that I get off work about 30 minutes before, so now I park my car there and make sure it is in front of the sign every time I come over. The last time I parked there, the lady was blowing leaves in her driveway and looked livid. She made a weird scuffing noise and just stood there while not leaf blowing, and I faked a phone call because I was uncomfortable. Like, I would have never parked there again. I always have a spot in my boyfriend's driveway, but you had to call the cops on me. The next one is titled, "The Dog is More Important." So last year, me, female 32, sister female 28, was kicked out of her boyfriend's house and I took her in. We don't have the best relationship, but she was jobless and I was the only relative still living in our country. Surprise, surprise, about 2 months later, she figured out that she was pregnant. One day, she started to complain about my dog, a beautiful 2-year-old half husky, and how it would be bad for her baby that she wouldn't raise her kid with a wild animal around. Please note that my dog is a total sweetheart, and I told her it was my house and if she was not comfortable here, she could leave, and my dog was staying no matter what. She kept complaining, but I would not change my mind. About 2 weeks ago, I had to travel for work to a remote location for a few days, and when I came back, my dog was not home, and my sister claimed she had no idea where it was. We got into a fight because I did not believe her. I ended up storming off and asked a few neighbors if they had seen it. One told me the last time he saw it, it was when my sister took him somewhere a few days ago. She uses my Uber account because she is broke, so when I found an odd trip to the other side of the city, I connected the dots. I drove all the way over there, and after asking around, I found my dog in a street restaurant. The owner took him after a blonde pregnant woman left him leashed to a fence. I ended up explaining the situation, paying him like $500, and I got my dog back. When I went back home, I kicked out my sister, gave her enough money for a week in a hotel, and sent her on her merry way. She made a huge scandal, and I admit I was a bit too forceful, but I was furious. She called all my family and friends, and they are telling me that I am an a-hole for picking my dog over my sister, and that I should take her back, that I should value that unborn baby more than a silly animal. Personally, I think my dog is more important, and what my sister did is unforgivable, but I will accept your judgment. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let us know in the comments whether you think OP was the a-hole in this story or not. I am very curious about your judgment in the comments. Update to the story. First of all, thanks for all the awards, I wasn't expecting that. After reading all your comments, I feel better with my decision. I'll try to answer some questions, but I cannot read all the comments. So I'm sorry if I missed something. So I left my dog with my sister because I never thought she would do something like this. She was complaining, and that would have been a huge red flag, but she complains about many things and never does anything else. I just thought it was something she had forgotten about in a few weeks. I did not leave her in charge of my pet in the sense that she didn't need to do anything for it. I have an automatic feeder, and my backyard is big enough for it to go without walkies for a few days. I live in a country where animal protection laws are almost non-existent. It would have been a hassle to get my lawyer to convince the police to get involved. Blame me for not using the proper legal channels, but I just wanted my dog back as soon as possible. And to be honest, I was really lucky my sister was dumb enough to take an Uber, or I probably would have never found my dog. The easiest thing was to pay the guy who found him. I'm gonna sound like an a-hole for this, but in that part of town, people don't take animals for the goodness of their hearts. I was really lucky I could convince the guy to let me buy it back. About the bit too forceful part, I mean, I was furious and screamed like a mad woman. Although she was hysterical too, the neighbors got involved and supported me, and I ended up throwing her the money for the hotel through the taxi window. I'm pretty sure I scared the hell out of the driver. I then gave her the money because even if I was mad, it felt wrong to throw someone pregnant to the streets with only her clothes and cell phone, and at least the money would be enough for her to not starve for a few days until she gets help from someone else. She is not ever living with me again. I'm gonna go no contact with everyone who sided with her. Yes, I explained my POV, but I come from a very conservative family that values human life above all. I've been drilled this in my head my whole life, so it was hard to know if I was making the right choice, which now seems obvious, of course. I don't really know why she broke things off with her boyfriend. The story changes a lot, but I'll tell you, they met when she came to visit me a few years ago, and she ended up moving in with him all in the same month. The arrangement was that she could live with me until the pandemic is over, because no one would hire a pregnant woman, and she works in tourism, which is a dead field right now. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I have to say, all I can say is that I am very happy to not have grown up in a family like this. And guys, with this, we have reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please feel free to check out my Patreon over at patreon.com/ripeyoutube, or join my YouTube membership program by clicking the join button to get access to even more exclusive videos. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you again tomorrow.